In this episode of the Military Mindset for Business podcast, I'm talking with Robert Kilsby. Now, Robert did his first tour of Vietnam at the age of 19 in 1971 as an SAS trooper. And then we follow his life through the next 20 years of the regiment, transitioning out into business, and then ultimately being the team principal of mountain road racing, which supports veterans in motorsport. Now, a life worth living, a life of purpose, a life that is, well, you've got to earn your stories. And Robert has earned some amazing stories. So stick around and have a listen to a story about a truly amazing Australian. Everybody, welcome to the Military Mindset for Business podcast, the podcast for the veteran business community. One of the things that I really love passionately about doing these pods is telling stories of veterans. And really, I've said this many times, like a fly on the wall, that I've just got to meet so many amazing people that have had really great lives. And it's all part of just telling the stories. And today I've got Robert Kilsby. G'day, Robert. How are you?
G'day, Pete. How are you?
I'm well, mate. Hey, Robert, whereabouts in the world do you share it with us?
Yeah, so I'm up at Mount Tamborine in Queensland, overlooking the Gold Coast, up on the top of the hill there.
Mate, we've crossed paths for about a year or so now. I want to talk about veterans in motorsport and the amazing life that you've had post army. But I always like to start right back. Where did you grow up?
Well, I'm a crow eater. I'm a South Australian by birth, and so I was pretty much a country boy. My dad was an electrician who was in the Electricity Trust of South Australia,
Yep.
and so he was a sort of like a supervisor guy. And way back when I was born in Lee Creek, right up in the desert there, he was actually the electrician running the big generator for the town, the powerhouse sort of thing. And so every few years we'd move from one country town to another as he went up through the ranks in ETSA there. So I lived in quite a number of country towns, before I left and joined the army.
So what was it that scratched the itch to get into the military? Was it always predestined? And you got family history? What made you, what were you, 17 when you signed up?
Yes, 17 and a half, I think I was. I was, my dad was in the Second World War in the Air Force up in the islands. And but that he never talked about the war or being military. He wasn't a military man per se. He did his bit in Second World War, and the thing that he'd never do was talk about it, about the Japs or Japanese, or he he was a mid upper gunner in a Hudson bomber they called the Widowmaker. For a little while it was because they had electric turrets when they first came out, and they said, "You're an electrician, jump in here." So the old volunteer thing. And so I asked him as a kid. I remember asking him. I said, "Did you get any Mitsubishi Zeros, Dad?" And he said, "No, I might have scared a couple, but that's about all." He said that was about the most I ever got out of him. But I remember he wouldn't buy a Japanese car from any ever. He'd never, even though they were the best cars, he'd always have a good look and he'd say, "This is a great car, but now let's go down to the Austin dealership."
Yeah. Because, mate, I just want to sort of set the scene. We're talking around 1968, 1969.
Yeah.
Vietnam War is in full swing.
Yeah.
And you make a decision to join the ARA and join the infantry.
Yeah. Well, I had, I was in Cubs and Boy Scouts, so I was always an outdoor sort of kid, and pretty adventurous right through. And the country kid, and most country kids are like that, I find.
Yeah.
And when I ended up in Adelaide, going to Adelaide Boys High, I wasn't too impressed with the the other students in some ways, because they seemed a bit like they're just going to school to tick a box or something. And so I actually joined the what in those days was called the CMF. These days, Army Reserve, the Citizens Military Force, I think it stood for. And I joined the 10th Battalion Royal South Australian Regiment, which was one of the old Gallipoli battalions actually, in the first AIF, and so I was an actual reserve trooper down there, while the other kids were, having marijuana parties or whatever they did in those days, So I was probably as a student, I was a private in the humping 3.5-inch mortars and things like that around the place for fun. And then from there, I got the impetus then to join the regulars, really, from that sort of 6-month stint with the Army Reserve there.
So it seems that you had well, as we go and we unpack it a little bit more, the youngest kid in your platoon going through Kapooka or through Ingleburn Infantry School, I think it was at the time. But maybe, I'm not trying to blow too much smoke, but maybe a heightened sense of maturity or sense of purpose at a young age, because you're in the SAS by 19. So there's always something driving you here to get somewhere.
Yeah, I guess I guess that's true. I believe I had a really good upbringing. Right? I was brought up to be independent, have a go. My dad was very supportive of pretty much anything I wanted to have a crack at, and mum too. But so I was pretty lucky in that respect, in terms of fortunate to have really good parents in that regard. When I was 14, they split up, and of the 4 boys, the 2 little ones went with mum, and the 2 older ones, I'm the oldest of 4. We went with dad. So not only the mum and dad split up, but all the boys split up as well in the family, and saw each other occasionally after that for a bit. So you had to pull on the boots and get on with it. So I was pretty fortunate to work out very early, and to me, actually, this is a big thing in human life. I worked out my parents were human beings at the age of 14, which is a fabulous threshold. It's a great step. A lot of people find trouble working that out until they have their own kids later on, maybe.
Yeah.
So I guess I was probably a lot more mature than some, and I was sort of pretty driven to achieve what I wanted to achieve, and that's been the case throughout my life, pretty much.
So in the modern army, for someone who never went to SAS, you get out of Kapooka, you go to School of Infantry, you get your qualification, you join an ARA battalion, you do your time in a regular battalion, and then you go in and see if you're eligible for kind of course selection. Yeah,
it's a bit of a normal step. Yep.
But for you, it was a bit different. You didn't even get into a regular battalion, is that right?
No, I never served in a battalion. In fact, I remember in the regiment, that was one of the threats. They said, if you mess up any more, Kilsby, you'll be going down the hill and wearing one of those big brown hats. And so it was interesting. I didn't actually even graduate from infantry school. I got out of there. They sent me away from there early to get across to the west to do the kata.
Is that because of the operational requirements of what was going on in Vietnam? This is an army at war, we're backfilling Rio cycle, all of this.
Yeah, no, I never got that feeling. It was just, they just had their cycles of recruiting. The selection board to go around all the army, it's twice a year or something like that. And I think I applied for it, and I obviously came recommended from my infantry training platoon, because they made me even though I was the youngest in the platoon there, they made me one of the section commanders, one of the student section commanders there, because everyone else would be on the terps on the weekend, and I'd be throwing myself over the obstacle course 6 times because I liked it. And it was quite different. Yeah. And so I when they put my application in and they come in, I didn't expect I'd get through. Actually, I just put it in, said, yeah, well, I'm going to go there one day, and they must have been. They said, "Oh, you're pretty young. We don't take people as young as you normally, you know." And I said, "Well, fair enough. Well, send me to a battalion, and I'll do my 2 years like everyone else, but I'll be there waiting to get in as soon as you let me in." And I think,
I just, on that note there, mate, I just love this. It's just my path. I'll be there. It's not like, oh, will I make it, or will they have me? It's like, no, I'll be there sooner or later. So just take me now and just let's get on with it.
yeah, well, I think they said, "Oh, well, we'll have a gamble on this bloke. You know,
Yeah.
he won't last too long, but you know, we'll give him a ticket." And so I went over there, and of course, you know, I was the youngest in that particular group. And there's been others over the years in the regiment, you know, just count them on one hand, probably as young as I, that was succeeded there, but very few. You know, might be two or three or more that I've heard of over 10-year period. You know, so it's an unusual
Yeah.
thing. Yeah. Mm.
Carter course.
Yeah.
Only 10% of people or so get through. I think in my notes I read 50 or 60 went on the course. Only half a dozen got through.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Do you remember much about Carter course, or?
I do remember a reasonable amount about it, but it's interesting. I meet a lot of guys who you know in the regiment and former soldiers there, and they a lot of them say it's one of the hardest things I've done, but I didn't find it hard. I
Yeah.
I just loved it too much. You know, I was right into it, and you know, it was arduous, but it wasn't difficult. You know, I didn't look back on it as a huge test. In fact, I can't remember a lot of stuff. I just remember the good stuff, and
Yeah.
I just cracking on, and because I loved operations and always have done, and so I just thought it was a great thing to do, and I didn't have a sense of, oh, you know, I didn't do that so well. I bet that's it. You know, I just kept on going. You know, you just got to keep on standing back up all the time and showing up. That's my sort of mantra really in
And
life.
what's it like as a young fella? Because Australia's been in Vietnam now for maybe 5, 6 years. I don't know how long the regiment was over there, whether they were there for the whole time or not.
Yeah, they did pretty much the full 6 years there.
Yeah.
Most other battalion units. Yeah.
So you got guys that have, been there, done that, come in and out of their
Yeah.
trips. What's your feeling like as a young fella with, I don't know if I say the expector or the opportunity or the excitement of, getting over there?
Well, I think it's sort of you know when you're trained to do something, you just want to do that job. So
Mm.
I wasn't. No, none of us were involved in the politics or otherwise of it.
So
It was
just get
just
on and do what they do.
yeah, get on. We're trained for this. Let's go. And people would just and it's the same right to today. That if you train up and you're not sent somewhere, they have a bit of a grumble about that. Come on, send me. Here I am.
Yeah.
And you talk to the guys in the regiment now. The young guys, and they're exactly the same, really.
Yeah.
They train very hard to get to do a job, and that's what they expect to do, and they get into it with a lot of drive. And I was the same. I must admit, when I was on the bus going out, in fact, I tried to go over there. I put my hand up to be a reinforcement to the squadron that was just finishing up early, and I did my pre-embarkation. They sent me over there, and I remember I was in the barber's chair getting my operational crew cut there in Adelaide, and Dad walked in waving a telegram saying, "They said you've got to go back to the regiment. You're not old enough yet." I wasn't 19, so you can't go to. So I nearly pulled that one off, and so they sent me back, and then I had another pre-embarkation leave, and then went up with the squadron when I just turned 19. So,
Yeah.
but I was fully badged, in those days back then at less than 18 and a half, actually.
So
And
do you
then
think,
I
do you think
did some courses and trained up with the squadron, ready to go to Vietnam.
do you feel like that extra, obviously that extra year of having to wait until you're 19 to actually tick the box to get over? Now, it's still not very old, but more skills, more drills. When you went over there, you felt prepared, ready to go?
Oh yeah, yeah. So it's not a matter of time. It's how you work up with all your comrades. You work in the same group of guys all the time. You face the same challenges. Guys are getting injured. There's a lot of injuries when you're training that hard. You're training with live rounds, not blanks, and a lot of the time. You're working with explosives and all sorts of things. So there's a lot of injuries in the special operations business, and I got a few, a fair number of them, to show for it. But so no one. It wasn't like, oh, I'm glad I've got more time to train up. It was just, yep, crack on, and everyone was pretty prepared. And I remember going out on the bus that night when we went down to Pierce Air Base to fly out via Singapore to Vietnam. And I went through the gates and I thought, I wonder if I'll ever see these gates again, because I've never been afraid of dying, and I'm still like that to this day. But I was more concerned if I got badly wounded or something, I think.
But this is real, like you're on the plane, war's on. There's nothing any more real than actually getting on that plane and going.
No, it was good. It was good. You were there with all your buddies. You trained up for a long time together. We'd gone through 2 months of pre-war training in Papua New Guinea together.
Yeah.
Very arduous work, courses, a lot of field work. So yeah, you're ready. And you're with the guys that have already been there, done that with another squadron or your squadron before, or my patrol. When I went there, he was a junior patrol commander in the squadron, but he was one of the best actually. The 2IC of the patrol was Hans Flair, DCM,
Yeah.
and and a lot of people in the army today still remember Hans. He's dead now, but he was a great guy. And these guys you train with, you live with, you sleep with, you fight with. And, it's sort of like a love affair for 50 odd years since then with all of them. It's just very close, compadres.
Well, mate, February 71. Do you get off the ship? Oh, where do you land? You in Vung Tau?
Yeah, no. We land in Tan Son Nhut Airport in Saigon, in
Yep.
Ho Chi Minh City these days.
Yep.
And it was a huge, it was the thing for the American forces there. So this Tan Son Nhut was the busiest airport in the world, I think, at that time. And the interesting, it was sort of a little bit of a mental dislocation because to get off this C-130, and everyone's walking around with guns, and there's tanks, and there's jet fighters flying in and out. Everyone's wearing weapons, and it takes you a couple of minutes to we're here in the war zone.
Yeah. So set the scene in 71. Where are we in terms of the war? Is about 9-10 months to go before the withdrawal occurs.
Yeah.
The northern forces are really starting to press down on the south and infiltrating Saigon on a regular basis. Where do you go out to Nui Dat and based out there, or?
Yeah. So we left Tan Son Nhut on a C-123, like what I call Baby Herc.
And a 10-minute flight to Nui Dat, is it?
Oh yeah, no, it's sort of 20 minutes or whatever.
Up and down.
20, 30 minutes or something like that. And we went there. We flew into. I'm pretty sure we flew into Nui Dat, Luscombe Field there. I think they landed there, which was the airstrip in the ADF base there. 1 Australian Task Force base. And then, up to the hill. But so SAS had a sort of a compound up on the high ground there, and most other people call it SAS Hill. Yep. And we were up there and had our own little sort of compound there for the squadron. And did all the stuff that all the other did there. Lived in tents with revetment around it and all that. Yeah. It had been mortared and rocketed a couple of times before I got there, but it didn't happen while I was there.
So,
Um,
do you
so
mind
yeah,
sharing about your first patrol, getting out?
yeah. Well, I think our first patrol was we went out on APCs actually. I think from memory, didn't happen very much at all, but the first patrol was like that. And we did a deception plan where we sat up on the top of the APC in normal greens, so we can get a bit of fresh air. And another patrol was in the box there, going out. Took us 2 or 3 hours going out there. Actually, an interesting incident on the way out there, the Songrai River was a big traffic jam as we were going out to cross over this river, and they had all sorts of tanks and armored personal carriers and infantry and all that sort of thing, and COs buzzing around the helicopters, wondering what was going on with this. And all of this was held up. There was a sapper corporal and his offsider from the engineers, a splinter team they called them, and thigh deep in the river, and they were searching for other mines because a Centurion had gone in and a big mine had blown a bogey wheel off right off the Centurion and stopped everyone in their tracks. So here, the whole war stopped for Corporal Bloggs and his mate. For the engineers, I thought that was shit hot. That was really good. And
No, it
and we,
sounds
anyway,
like a.
we kept on going, and then we pulled off into the bush at our AO area, and we got out. We get out there and changed into our camis and painted up and all that sort of stuff. And the other boys got up in their greens on the top, and then they trundled back, because you got to go through a couple of villages and things like that on the route. And I remember turning. This is my first patrol as a teenage gunslinger, so to speak. And I said to my patrol commander Graham, I said, "Hey Graham, can I put the bullets in the magazines now?" And he just about crapped himself. He said, "No." So there's a lot of humour involved with all this stuff.
Mate,
And
working
anyway, so we went for a bit of a wander in the bush, and I don't think anything happened on that particular patrol, but it was a good workup. And yeah, so it was mostly we went to work with the choppers, um, but that was a particular one on the APCs, which was interesting.
how much either interagency or international work did you do? With the CIA, DEA,
Well,
that are US SEAL
yeah,
teams?
we had various numbers of our guys. Typically the patrol commander sort of level sergeants going off and working with other, training at some of the American special forces and things like that, throughout the country here and there. The We had an exchange at that time with the SEAL Team 1.
Mm-hmm.
And so they'd come out with us. They'd send a couple of guys coming out with us. They didn't like that too much. It was too much camping for them. They're sort of raiders, so they out on guard, back on the Budweiser in the beer, in the bar real quick. But we went down as a patrol. We went down, did our turn at Dong Tam, which is down on the Mekong, down south, in the Delta area, south of Saigon there, Ho Chi Minh City. And it was a big ARVN naval base there. And the SEAL team platoon, November platoon, had a little compound in the midst of this. And so we went down there, and I did actually 4 missions with SEAL Team 2, SEAL Team 1, November platoon, which was pretty good. I like that. Yeah. And they were good guys, that we got on real well with the SEALs.
I've caught the ferry from Ho Chi Minh down to Vung Tau and just cruise down that river there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's so now we're getting into the end of 71. What's the feeling like with do we know there's an impending withdrawal coming? Because from a soldier's perspective, you're still just doing the job on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Where is the sort of scene here in terms of, from a strategic perspective, about going home versus staying versus, wrapping this thing up?
Yeah, well, I think the main thing with the shooters, we were just doing our patrol after patrol, like doing the missions, and That one of the photographs I sent you was me after I come back from the last patrol. I didn't actually see that photograph for 35, 40 years, and I saw it on the wall in the historical section in the SAS regiment. There, they got all that, and I looking at that. They've got all the medals for all the medals the guys have won and all this sort of stuff, and I got a few pictures of various people in there. Anyway, so I'm walking along and I said, "Oh, that looks familiar," and I'd never seen it before, and it was me, and that's that
Hang on,
one.
that's me then.
Yeah, and it was taken by another guy, but I didn't know he'd taken it. So now I've been able to get that photograph. So that's a big one. But the we didn't have any long-term understanding that we were pulling out. We could understand that they were talking about it, and nothing lasts forever, right? So
Yeah.
So when they decided, right, you're going back, and they sent the tanks and us back first, primarily because there wasn't enough combat relative to tanks there anymore, and the other thing, they sent us back because the task force was doing this sort of withdrawal in, shrinking in. And of course we were the people going right out behind the lines and all that sort of stuff, going out a long way from the task force. The longest area that our patrol and other patrols went to on a reasonably regular basis was the Maytao Mountains, which you'd always put a few more mags in your pack for that, because from the time you gave your contact word and we're in contact, we need to get out of here in a hurry with the old Morse key. By the time that was picked up, you had at least an hour before you had choppers overhead, maybe.
Yeah. So
and that's a lot of fighting and running,
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a difficult time. But so we were the first group to be sent home, with the tanks. And I think that was in October or something like that. And I got to say, I was being a gunslinger. I was a bit peeved, actually. I thought, well, I haven't done my 12 months, and I was a bit pissed off because I thought we still got a job to do here, sort of thing. But a lot of other guys were pretty happy to go home. But I'm very operationally driven, so I thought I'd been shortchanged. Anyway, went home and all the rest of it. And yeah.
Well, mate, I am going to throw those pictures up for anyone watching YouTube on the end. I'll throw them up shortly. But there's actually some great pictures of you coming on that last patrol. So you've been gypped, mate. 8 months in, you didn't get your full trip. Time to get back. However, you're now you're not even 20 years old yet.
No, I'm still 19. Yeah.
You've passed Carter course. You're a fully badged, operator, and you've got, the runs on the board. What's it like coming back home at such a young fella? Because you're soldiering now. This is it. Yeah, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting that a lot of guys left the regiment after the war finished. For us, because they're operators. Like peacetime, who's interested in that stuff? We've already been there, done that before, So a lot of guys got out, but a lot of us stayed in. I was quite happy to soldier on, forever, in a sense. When we left the SEAL compound in Dongtam, one of the SEALs called out in a loud voice as we were on the truck trundling out of there, saying, "See you later." And you hear this, one of the SEALs said, "See you next war, man."
Yeah.
So that was sort of our attitude, well, we're finished with this one. The next one shouldn't be too long. We'll hang about for that and get stuck into that one. That was how a lot of us felt.
Who was to know that was 20, 30 years
to the next one. Right. Yeah.
Mate, a question if I may ask. And this is something that, from my military experience, I'm always interested to know when you jump on a plane and it says job title. What do you do? And for me, I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, for some people, teacher, professor, doctor, it's pretty straightforward. And one of the things that I've always shared with my non-military friends, city mates, is that
Mm.
some people, I believe, on that job description, they should just write warrior.
Yeah.
And, it's not really a term that we would, is it socially acceptable nowadays? Are we too precious to use that term? But some of the people that I have had the pleasure of meeting who should actually have that on that job title. Can you just share a little bit about that warrior culture within the unit and what it's like to live amongst these people and be one yourself?
Well, I think you're either a warrior or you're not, in a sense. It's not something you learn to be, or I think it's your own personal view of life and the way you are. You're probably made for sitting on the veranda sharpening the arrows while mum runs the house, sort of thing. You're sitting there waiting for the next threat. But the the I've always thought. I mean, I don't have any qualms about calling a warrior, but I mean, a lot of people aren't warriors and they get called warriors. It's sort of like a lot of modern language. People are called legends. And I always thought you had to be dead before you're a legend. So that I've had to come to grips with that one over the time. And everyone's a legend. If you're a footy player, you're a legend. And I've met a few legends, real ones, and they're well above the footy player, so to speak. Or, so I'm a bit sensitive about certain words. To
Yeah.
me, I don't think it's a lot of people think that warrior or something elite, but to me, it's just a type. I
I
reckon
think you're right. Yeah.
it's just a type of personality. Uh, the just because you're in a combat unit doesn't mean you're a warrior. You may be. It depends on yourself as an individual.
No, I think this is, mate, I 100% agree with you. And reflecting from somebody who, you know, I'm not a warrior, even though I did, not a long time, 12 years, not as long as a lot of people,
Yeah.
but it is a point of self-reflection. And again, sometimes I always have this sort of view of sort of being on the front line of watching things and just watching these people. And for me,
Yeah.
when I look back at, human history, that this warrior class, it doesn't necessarily mean they had to even be that special.
No,
Like
no,
but they're
no,
just
no,
a kind of person that was there to defend and protect and do
no.
jobs that other people wouldn't do.
Yeah, it's not a special forces thing, I've got to say.
Yeah.
There's plenty of warriors in the normal units, even in many other non-combat units. You'll find occasionally through there be sort of people like that. I always I go back to this. A lot of people who are not in the special operations area, they've got a misplaced idea that oh yeah, those special forces people, they're warriors and all that sort of thing. But it's all about whether you do your best in whatever job you've got. So I've got a tremendous, and most of the guys in the regiment have got a tremendous respect for everybody, no matter what job you do in the military.
Yeah.
All three services. As long as you're doing your best. And I used to have so much respect for the old cooks in the morning out in the field and exercise, and that they'd have to go around at Sparrows and light all the chuffers up, and you'd hear
Yeah.
them blowing themselves up on these chuffers, and boom, and off go a chimney. And I thought, how gutsy do you have to be to do that? So,
Well, mate,
so it's not
it's
an
just like,
elitist viewpoint that the most vast majority of guys that I serve with have it all. We just do that, they do that. I mean, some people you respect incredibly, like the tunnel rats or in the engineers and people. A lot of people do a fantastic job, and so there's no level of he's better than him, or there's none of
yeah,
that. No.
just a quick tangent. 30th of May today, 2011, Lance Corporal Andrew Jones, who was a cook,
Yeah, that's
was
right.
killed in Afghanistan.
That's right.
So,
Yeah.
me and Maddie, my business partner, Maddie, Andrew was on Matt's team in the post office in East Timor and Dili.
Oh,
So
okay.
just a quick sort of point of remembrance there for Corporal Jones as a cook. Mate, tell me, and while we're on this, talking about loggies, You
Yeah.
did a bit of time at the hospital in Vung Tau.
Yeah, I got for whatever reason I got an injury there, and I was flat on my back. I couldn't move. It was excruciating pain actually. I had to be choppered down to the uh, field hospital in Vung Tau,
Yeah.
and so I had some agonising time to get there. And I think what had happened, I had some sort of a back injury from it was sort of dry season time, so we used to patrol with very heavy weights. You have to take a lot of water, um, and it was the amount of water you take in for a patrol, because we didn't like having any resupply because it would give our game away. So we had to take in a lot of stuff, and dry season you got a lot of canned food instead of dehydrated food and so on. And in wet season, it's easy. You carry a little pack, and you got a couple of water bottles, and you can collect. It rains on you every day, and that sort of thing. But dry season, you're carrying big weights, and I think I injured my back trying to lift my pack up in a tactical way, holding my rifle and all that, and suddenly it just got to me and banged me over. So I was medevaced down to the Australian hospital, which actually is the best hospital I think I've ever been in, by the way. And the reason I say that is because I was put into the casualty ward, into where they brought all the war wounded into. So I was in there, flat on my back, couldn't move, and so I saw a lot of the guys who were wounded from the battalions and that as they were coming in, and that was a real eye opener to me in terms of, well, not an eye opener, but it was just I witnessed a lot of that drama. And the medical staff were just brilliant, because the what they did in those days, I'm not sure if they still do it, but they probably still do. But when they run a field hospital, but they'd take the best surgeons and so on out of Sydney and Melbourne and what have you, and they'd say, right, you're now a lieutenant colonel for 6 months. Here, go up and practice on the wounded.
Yeah.
So they had really, really top surgeons, but the nursing, the army medical staff, the nurses and the both male and female, and the nursing sisters and that, and the fearsome matron and all those sort of things. It was just like the First World War, but they were so compassionate about our wounded. It was just so brilliant. Just before I left, they brought in a 2 RAR guy who'd been hit with a tree burst from an RPG. And young guy, and he'd been perforated. He must have been lying on his back under cover or something. He got perforated with a shrapnel and pieces of timber and everything from the blast. And they brought him in, and they'd done the surgery on him. He was across from me, and he had all his guts in a plastic bag sitting on his chest, right? Good stuff, right? And so they'd done the surgery, and they're putting it there, and he was due to wake up after surgery. And so as soon as he was due to wake up, they all gathered around him. There's about 10 of them from the staff, and they all gathered around his bed. And as he woke up, they said, mate, Paul, I remember his name, Paul, mate, you'll be right. It was just fantastic, actually,
Yeah.
And he was able to get through that trauma of waking up, seeing his intestines on his chest, That was really interesting. But that was the caliber of our people. Our people are fantastic in the military. Whatever service, whatever job they're in. That's what I found anyway.
Mate,
I actually had to take the effects of one of our troop commanders who'd been killed and brought into the hospital. I had to take his patrol gear and effects back with me when I went back to the squadron. Brian Jones, he was one of our best ones. Didn't make it.
Mate, this is a job of soldering and warfare, isn't it?
Oh, well, that's what it's about. Yeah, it's not easy, but I find that the people say, "Why do you do that? Why do you do this? Why did you go and do this target Tasmanias and all those things?" I said, "Well, because it's difficult, mate. It's difficult. I mean, why would you spend your life doing easy stuff? I haven't been able to work that out yet, and I'm not
mate, just born for this stuff. Now let's look. I seriously could talk to you about this all the
Yeah,
time.
sorry about my long answers to short
No,
questions,
no,
mate.
mate. I'm happy to listen. I'm fascinated, mate. This is your story, not mine. I was able to, go to Vietnam last year,
Oh yeah,
and
it's a good place.
again,
Good place.
man, the people are lovely, the food's
Yeah, yeah,
amazing. I
yeah.
do things like mini pilgrimages where, I got down to Vung Tau and just sort of had just walking the ground and,
Yeah,
what's it called? Drinking the Grand Hotel and that little bar next door. I
that's
don't know.
right. Yeah, yeah,
Whatever. I did go with a couple of mates and we did have to have a couple of tinnies, I'm not trying to be too cliched with the Red Gum song. But mate, you're back in Australia. Um, we're about to enter the Great Peace, but you've still got another 15 or so years, in the SAS regiment. Just tell us about what that time is like and the evolution of your career into ultimately, I can only imagine one of the best jobs in the army, but senior soldier of the squadron.
yeah. Well, I think you know, basically, I just loved the life, so I was going to soldier on, but in due course, I was picked up. I was selected within the regiment to get involved with unconventional warfare,
Mhm.
and this was to me this was my chief specialty as it turned out in the military.
Yep.
Um, and So in 72, 70, yeah, 73, I was selected for that, and there was a group of us, basically a troops worth of guys selected from around the regiment, like report over here, you're picked, you go over there, sort of thing, and we started the UW business in the regiment, and which is to me, which is the main sort of special operations thing that I've always been interested in, which
Sorry, mate,
is
the W business?
the unconventional warfare business,
Got it.
UW, yeah,
Oh,
uh,
UW, sorry, yeah.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah, and so um, you're talking about long stints, training up guerrillas, guerrilla warfare, and all those sort of things. So it's quite a complex, comprehensive sort of business, and nowadays, one commando regiment has the official again official thing to run at.
Yeah,
Um, the so I got involved with that uh, and worked away for about 2 years. I was injured badly parachuting during that time, 74. Crashed in at Bindoon, high winds, and it's a pretty uneven. In those days, it was a pretty uneven DZ. So anyway, oscillating parachute, screwed in, and completely wrecked my right shoulder. So I had to get over that, but I still soldiered on with that injury for many years. Um, but I then the powers that be decided that they were going to stop UW because
mhm.
you're talking about again fighting in other countries and all those sort of things, and I think the powers that be thought, well, this is a bit too political, in the typical way the head shed runs on high. They're very sensitive about things, and poorly so, I think. And today is no different from if you read the news. But so they kiboshed that, and I saw that on the on the pike there, and I thought, well, I got to do something else, otherwise I'm just sitting around here peacetime. So I applied for a language course, and then they picked me up to go over to Point Cook, RAF School of Languages in Point Cook, to do a full year of language. I thought I was actually a laydown was there to do Indonesian, which I'd already done 3 months Indonesian course, and I found that really simple and easy. And I thought I could be in for an easy year here. And I walked over there, and then had my name, Corporal Kilsby, a Chinese course on the door, and I went, what?
Mate, didn't
So
you just say a couple of minutes ago, nothing easy? I only pick the hard stuff.
no, that's right. I had a moment of weakness there for a minute, but so I ended up doing the Chinese course. It's probably one of the hardest years I've ever done was being doing Mandarin Chinese there. It was a terrific thing, but in a way. But the Indonesians were playing ping pong tournaments by about 3 months in. They were speaking like professors, and the handful of us doing Chinese, we graduated after flat out working all day and all night with homework every night. After 11 months, and we could speak about we were about the level of a grade 5 Chinese kid or something. So so the
Did you do
Indonesians
much
were on
time in
holidays there.
China?
Huh?
Did you ever do any time in China on a posting or
Yeah.
diplomat?
So I went not then I changed to from infantry into intelligence corps.
Ah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so so then I was picked up to do that, and then I worked for with DSD. It's called ASD now.
Mm-hmm.
The signal,
Signals directorate, yeah.
yeah, signals director, and worked with them for probably a total of 5 years or something on and off. And two of those years I spent seconded to the British push there in Hong Kong. So I lived in Hong
Yeah.
Kong for 2 years.
Mm.
At that time, I was resting between marriages as well. So I was pretty exhausted by the time I came home.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty heavy duty time up there. And that was when I bought my first Alfa Romeo, and I had it delivered to me in Hong Kong, duty free thing, as you do. And that was the start of my Alfa Romeo journey
Well,
as
mate,
well.
I wouldn't mind in a moment using that segue to talk about veterans in motorsport and the work
Yeah,
that you've been doing over there. But
yeah,
just before I do, and again, maybe somewhat sensitive topic, but as a two squadron member, as someone
mm.
who served, in the regiment, can you just share any thoughts on what's happening with the regiment nowadays, as particularly one of the custodians of the history? Do you want to share any thoughts on
Yeah,
what's
yeah.
happening?
Well, ask me any question about that. Yeah. So
Well,
what are you?
first of all, the disbandment of two squadron.
Yeah. So Two Squadron was actually disbanded before, right? Um,
Mhm.
but it wasn't taken off the All Bat. That's the difference with this one, I think. As far as I know, it was
Yeah,
disbanded. Because after Vietnam, it was actually disbanded not long after that, and they went back to 1 and 3 squadrons then for quite a while. Number 1 and number 3 squadron. Later on, they brought 2 squadron back, and then I think it was disbanded again, and then recently, in like a couple of years ago or early last year or whenever it was, it seemed like a head shed knee jerk reaction.
mm.
I don't know if that's a dichotomy, head shed and knee jerk. I don't know how that works, but and they got rid of it as some sort of a punishment for the allegations of war crimes and all those sort of things that has been going on since before the Brereton report came out. And that's a pretty contentious issue with a lot of people at the moment. There's a documentary that the
Have you
regiment
seen
wanted to
it?
put together.
Bravery and Betrayal?
I've seen bits of it, but I'm due to when it's coming to Brisbane. I think in July. I think I've got tickets to go and see it in July.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it is.
But
So
it's a
just
brilliant thing, and so a lot of the guys on there I know, and
yep.
they're just telling the truth about what this and that. So it's going down quite well, I believe. But so the 2 squadron, it was very contentious, and a lot of the 2 squadron old and bold didn't like it at all. And the regiment's gone through quite a difficult time under the pump. It's interesting that the British SAS have been going through a similar thing.
Yeah.
It looks like you can have a go at it as long as you haven't been there and done that.
Yeah.
You got to come from outside or something and say, well, this is terrible, and away you go. But I don't know. The thing is, warfare is warfare, and it's never pretty. And if you
that's fundamental.
if you investigated Australian forces going back through all the wars we fought, in the First World War and the Second World War, man, there's a lot of worse things going on there, but they don't talk.
Yeah. Oh, look, I just I just wanted to sort of recognize that as part of someone in the regiment yourself, and and like even the units. Like I was in 3RA as my first posting as the RAMI officer, and just
Yeah,
even those humble couple of years, and it was like we did a pretty passive Timor trip, but just even that sort of just that connection I had to my mates, and just being a part of that,
yeah,
let alone being in significant combat within these units and subunits. I just sort of feel that, oh look, it's not for me to really say because I'm a bit of an outsider in this space, but I just think you said it pretty well. Unless you're there, unless you've lived it, unless you've been it, I don't know if you've got really too much to judge. The peers will judge each other and what will come from inside, and people know. But for me, I just want to respect service and the tough things that
yeah. Well,
these people.
that's right. I mean, everyone signs up for service, right?
Yeah,
And service is to me the key of everything. And the people that sign up for the military are interested, whether they realise it or not, in the phenomenon of service,
yeah.
And I'm still in that sort of in that boat, even though I'm not wearing any uniforms, So
It's a mindset,
that's
isn't it?
my nature.
Yeah.
I like to serve and get on with it.
It's the way. It's the reason why the veteran business community exists, is because I
Yeah,
have this. I don't know what that. It's a silly term, but it's almost like a paternal affection for still to contribute to the community of great people who did great things.
yeah, yeah,
And just even connecting with you and the other lads and girls within the community,
yeah.
I just love being a part of it. I
Yeah,
mean,
well,
let's
just
yeah, keep
before
going.
you move on, so I went back to the regiment. I was actually going to get out of the army when I came out of Hong Kong, and I was going to go into business and introduce Australian businesses to trade with China, you know, and show them how to do that and all that. And my troop commander from the old UW troop rang me up and said, "Oh, he's a fantastic officer. He was a terrific leader and very unconventional, which I liked." And uh, Bill Forbes, and he rang me up and said, "Hey, listen, how about come back to the regiment?" And I said, "Oh no, this is peacetime. It's
Yeah.
that's not my go. I'm looking for a bit more activity." And he said, "No, not as I said. I've been there, done that. I've been a shooter and all that." And he said, "No, no, I'm not talking about that. I want you to come. I'm picking up a squadron there now as the OC, and I want you to come back and run my intel for me." And I said, "Oh," because I'm
Mm.
the intelligence corps by that time, of course. And I said, "Oh, no, no, no." I put the phone down. About half an hour later, the old heart's beating. I rang him up, and said, "Yeah, sign me up." And
Come on.
so I went back there and I did some interesting work there for another 4 years, um, and on the intelligence side with the squadrons because I'd been because I've been on both sides of the fence. I could do the job quite well, I think. And the last 2 years there, I did 2 years consecutively with counterterrorism and
Mhm.
ran that on the inside. For that was good, and I did all the shooting part as well. To make sure I understood exactly what the boys were going through. So
At the draw.
yeah, so that was that, and then after that, I went back and I was instructor at School of Military Intelligence for another short stint there. And then I got selected to go down and was the wing sergeant major of the Special Warfare Wing, as they called it in those days. Then down at out of Queenscliff there at Swan Island, and that was the best job in my career actually, because all the things in my career had come into that one job, and you can't say that much at all typically for most people.
From
And
those
everything
first
I've got
patrols.
all in that one job. Brilliant.
Yeah. From all those long recon patrols, in South Vietnam,
Mm,
through the career, through all the training, through all the
yeah,
courses, setting up the UW stream, and
yeah,
here it is, like the culmination of it all.
yeah. I was very fortunate in that regard. But I mean, I've always to me, I was a resource for the army,
Yeah.
and they were a resource for me, and we got along famously. I basically worked out where I wanted to go, and I got them to send me there, and it just
All
kept
for it,
on
mate.
cracking.
Did you ever? Sorry, actually, I will ask you a question. I was having lunch yesterday with a long-time RSM of Two Commando, and who's someone who's done a lot of work over the last 10 or 12 years.
Yeah,
And he was talking to me about what it was like when his soldiers get out. Now, at Holsworthy Barracks, you got the front gate, and he
yeah,
was talking about the moment where you hand over your ID card. And he was just sharing a moment with one lad. He got to the front gate, walked out to him, done a couple of trips with him, so, like, all the best. He got the card and he walked that 100-meter walk between Holsworthy front gate to the station. I found it a really poignant moment after doing after for I don't know who that gentleman was, but he's done multiple deployments. He's lived the hard life, walked the hard walk, and he walks out of the gate to the train station onto his next life. What was it like when you finally walked out?
yeah. This is a big subject, for a lot of people just on its own, right? This transition, from I call it from going to the first battlefield to the second battlefield.
Yeah.
I'm in my third battlefield now, right? But I think a lot of people have a lot of troubles with it because they're not self-actuated. They're not planning, or they didn't, especially if they've been medically outed, or medevaced, or transited out with a medical problem. They feel quite dislocated. Most people have got a bit of an idea what they want to do, but a lot of people don't plan it. In my case, I had a pretty good transition because I already knew where I was going to go and what I was going to do, and I'm always planning and goal setting and cracking on. So, but a lot of guys are not like that, and they have troubles with this, and therefore their family typically they've still got kids and things like that when they leave. So it can be a very difficult time for families as well, which then compounds the issues and things like that.
Were you ever
There's a lot
tempted
of
to go
guys with
like?
PTSD and so on. So
Yeah, sorry, mate. Were you ever tempted to go like secret squirrel side of the house and do more
um,
operations for the government?
yeah, I did. I did put a couple of applications in, and uh, they were, and also for a sort of a security firm and things like that. Not sort of basic security, but control risk, that sort of stuff.
Mm.
And but it didn't come off at the time. They weren't ready for me, and at that time they weren't hiring or whatever. So that didn't come off, and in a way, I'm pretty happy with that because my second battlefield, to me, my next mission was to go into business and be in business, So I'm sort of glad in a way that didn't come about because, if you're working for someone else, they own you. A lot of guys I met getting big bucks, but man, they got to turn up on time.
Yeah.
They're not running their own life. Pretty much.
It's
They've chosen that, but it's the price of freedom. Freedom ain't free. So
what you said there, this is the number one reason why the veteran business community exists is
oh,
because
I think it's a fantastic thing. Yeah.
well, number one, I'm very blessed to have a mate, Matt Mosley, who, as I transitioned out of army, we were like, hey, let's do business together. And that was, that's allowed us, and we've set up successful businesses. That's not only been, very financially, rewarding, but this is how I'm spending my day. I'm chatting to you, I'm going to go out and clean the pool in a minute. If I want to go to the gym later, I'll do that. I surge when I want to surge. I smash work when I want to smash it. I travel when I want to travel. It's not for everyone, but there is a way that we can, create our own futures and be responsible for our own destinies. And that's why this is our method to do it. But tell us.
I think it's not everyone's. I mean, running your own business is difficult, right? Yeah. So therefore, it's worth doing, in my view. But but it's not for everybody because you know, now you've jumped into an area of uncertainty, you know, especially in cash flow, you know. So you have a feast or a famine and up and down, and you've got to have everything set up to try and get through those waves. And it's harder on families in some way sometimes. Um, so yeah, it's not everyone's business, and you know, most businesses go broke in the first 3 to 5 years that they after they start, you know, and that's for obvious reasons. So the military thing also is uh, I think there's a lot of skills that we bring from being accountable in the military to being able to array them against the business of running a business. You know, I think it's a lot of people don't realise this. A lot of ex-military guys not quite sure about this, but they're very valuable to me in business because they're well ahead of their contemporaries in the civilian life because they're accountable. They turn up on time. They care about this. They care about that, and they get on with it. You know.
I cannot agree more. And you know, some of the things that are really tough to do in business, you know, like it might sound funny, but planning, organization. You know, I'm not saying that you have to be military to do all this stuff, but we come out with a very, very like high advantage on how to be able to deliver these things in business. I just think that we can season it with a bit of sales and marketing and understanding cash flow and accounting. There is a really, really strong propensity for people to give it a crack, you know, and just for anyone out there that's either a veteran or, you know, ex-serving, that's either in business or thinking about starting business, come and meet us, come and join us, come and hang out with the community, because you've got people for everyone within the community. And I'm really adamant about this. It's a place to share and learn. Like, I even though I've got some decent businesses, one of the reasons I love being part of this and doing these pods is because, man, I just sit here and just learn, and it just helps me get through.
Yeah, well, the teacher learns more than the student typically.
Oh, mate, so let's talk about veterans in motorsport. Mate, of someone who's been to Mount Panorama at least 10 or 12 times growing up in Katoomba with family in Bathurst. And mate, I used to be a V8 supercar guy. I still love it. But I was definitely a Holden guy, so which is a bit disappointing now. I can't get into the supercars anymore when there's no Holdens on there. I did have a moment about 5 years ago when I was in the Philippines, and I was introduced to a Filipino senator, and we were driving from Manila to Clark Air Base. There's a restaurant there.
Yeah.
And he took me in his Ferrari 458 Special.
Oh,
and,
nice car.
Man, to be honest, I was more scared in that car than I was on any of my deployments. And one of the things that was amazing to me about being a passenger in that Ferrari was
it could have been the driver, you know, it could have been the driver.
Well, what's amazing wasn't just the speed, it was how they stopped. It was like we were going flat out, you know, at a T intersection, but it just pulls up. So mate, I love cars. I'm not a great car guy, but tell us about veteran motorsport.
Well, I'm going to say, because a lot of people ask me this, you know, how did you get into motorsport in the first place? And I think that's probably the first brick in the wall, really.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it at that time, so I'm a latecomer to the old PTSD diagnosis. You know, I've had brilliant coping mechanisms, so I didn't, you know, care about the diagnosis for a long time, and you know, I didn't want to do anything about it. In fact, I'd say that I was concerned about it primarily from an indirect reason, and that was I felt that a lot of guys were eroding the system, you know, with the DVA and that, and you know, I wasn't going to have any of that stuff. You know, my first core value is integrity. So I wasn't going to get the snout in the trough like what I could see that many other people, not all, you know, obviously majority are fine, but it was enough to put me right off it. So I was under the pump there in the early 2000s, probably 2001, 2. You know, I was working, I was earning good money, but it was a bit soulless. You know, it was sort of, you know, what's money? You know, money's a form of exchange. It allows you to do things you want to do. But, you know, if you're running a business or you're running an activity or even in a job and all you want is money, you know, to make more money, it's a bit meaningless, actually, I've got to say. Some people love it, but, you know, to me, it's pretty meaningless. So I was starting to unravel a bit. So I decided that I needed to pull the pin on everything, and so I had some. I had my Alfa Romeos, and I got a couple of sons, and I was going to do up the couple of Alfa Romeos and give them my sons. That didn't work. They reckon they're old, hopeless old cars, So they didn't have the same passion for it that I did. But I bought a little an old car because I saw a photograph of what looked to me the same color as my first Alfa that I took to Hong Kong. It was an ivory color car, GDV, Alfetta GDV, and a young rooster up in Port Douglas had it, and I bought it for $650, and I got it shipped down, and I thought, I'll at least do it up, give me something to do as I head out the back door here. And I went to the Alfa Romeo Club in Brisbane for a few tips on how to do this, and I found that a number of the members were racing their old classic Alphas around the racetrack and so on, and the old competition candle sort of started to flicker again, and started to flicker up. And, maybe it sounds a hard thing to do. Oh, let's do that. So I started doing that, and then I found that the hardest thing to do would be to do Targa Tasmania, because it was a long way from here and cost a lot of money, and very difficult to get a car ready. So I started, and that car that I bought, I did 5 Targa Tasmanias in that car eventually, and so I got into that in 2006, I think. I met a guy who was ex 2 Commando Regiment guy, or 4R 2 Commando in those days, I think. And he was running a Datsun 240Z, which is a great car for that sort of work, in the tarmac rally. And I met him down there. He's a great guy, Matt, and he was supporting Legacy, and he had legatees and the Legacy guys come around and have a look at the car and all this, and he was supporting Legacy, and also the people that supported Legacy, like Castrol, big companies, they were also therefore supporting him to promote Legacy. And I thought, well, that's a good way to go. That's really good. And that was the start of my ideas to do something similar. And I started thinking, well, and he'd been wounded some degree in Afghanistan himself, and he had a mate from the regiment, for 2 Commando Regiment, as his navigator as well, who'd been wounded as well. So that's where I got the first idea from, and then I extrapolated from there, and formed Mountain Road Racing, and determined to help veterans in recovery get involved in the team, because it's a very uplifting environment. Tarmac rally, everyone wants to help each other, and it's not like track racing, like your Holdens and Ford stuff, because it's like, don't come near my garage, secret squirrel stuff. I don't want to tell you what I got under the hood and all that stuff. But rallying is quite a different picture.
Community.
Oh, fantastic! Everyone, doesn't matter whether, and a lot of them are very wealthy, but and a lot of them, some of them aren't. And I was certainly in the lower end of the scale there, a baggy ass privateer, right? But so I got involved with that, and I started Mountain Road Racing from that time. And in 2005, I picked up our team motto, which is, "It's always too soon to quit," because I had a lot of troubles that year, and we finally scraped through and made it. And so I picked up that motto and had it on the back of my race car and on my tow car ever since. So
because Targa is six days.
Yeah, it was in those days, and it's coming back again now after some deaths in the last few years. But it's a different beast now. It's probably too expensive for me to get involved with, but it was a great thing. They ran about 25 or more of them over the years, and it was the hardest thing to do in Australia in terms of a privateer type thing, without having $1 million in the race team,
Mate, so if you're a veteran and you're into motorsport, how do they get involved, or what are the kind of things? I spend a lot of my time when I'm not in hospital having
double open heart surgeries and surviving cancer and all those sort of things, as I've done in the last few years. Talking to sponsors or potential sponsors and corporate about supporting the team and supporting our veterans, because a veteran comes on board with us and he'll either be a navigator or in the car with me, he'll be crew chief, like running a patrol type of thing, crew chief, positional leadership there, or be one of the 3 or 4 service crew, pit crew sort of guys. And male or female, all services. As long as they can pick up a spanner and walk, they should be right. But it's for guys who are recovering from various, psychological and physical ills and also transitional issues.
Get back in, join the team.
So basically, what happens is that it doesn't cost them anything. It's all funded from our efforts to get sponsorships and donations and things. And basically, they come along on one of these national level, championship tarmac rallies as part of the crew, involved with that team, and they're in the pursuit of excellence again. They're working in small teams. A lot of the stuff that we have in the military, and so we're in the self-hire, self-fire business, so people can take as much as they want and leave when they want.
Yeah.
They're not part of a clique, or they don't have to do this or do that. It's very, very straightforward. Get on, have a crack, and enjoy the hell out of it. And it's very uplifting.
Mate, I'm 50 this year, so I'm no spring chicken. In the Vietnam War, you finished your tour 4 years before I was born, so you're no spring chicken either, mate.
You're a bit late, mate. I was already there. Yeah, that's right.
But just a couple of years ago, you did a couple of 1,000-kilometer paddle down the Murray River, mate.
That was in I think that was in 2021.
Yeah.
And I got back from my 70th birthday. So that was 2,450 clicks.
Yeah.
From the Bringamong Bridge down to the exit, near Goolwa there, Murray Mouth. And so people said, "Oh, how was that?" And I said, "Well, I found it reasonably arduous, especially the camping bit. Lifting all your gear up on them, up through muddy banks, and then loading and unloading, loading and unloading, and all that sort of thing." And I said, I actually found it a little bit arduous. But when I got back, I was diagnosed with, as soon as I got back, I was diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And so I didn't realize it. It was interesting. I was in my tent every night, fixing myself up, sort of thing, of the night time, because you don't heal properly. You get a lot of cuts and abrasions, and I was like Dr. Kildare in the hoochie there every night. But so I'd done it under the pump with the cancer. I didn't realize until I got back, and then I spent all of 22 being diagnosed, treated, and pretty heavy duty treatment, and then trying to recover from that, all 22. So then another speed bump in the highway of life.
Just another battlefield.
And then last year in June, I had 2 open heart surgeries for a triple bypass. The first one, I busted the plates up in my chest or something, and they had to open me up again and re-bolt me up or something. And I've only really just sort of recovered from that in the last 2 or 3 months. So it's all go.
What actually just concerns me a little bit is if you say that paddling the Murray the couple of 1,000 k's was a little bit arduous. This is coming from someone who, the Carter course was fine, mate. No worries. I just don't know what your definition of arduous is, compared to mine, mate. So, but at the same time, you don't look a day over 60, mate. Hopefully, that's
some guys are a glutton for punishment. You know what I'm saying, so.
Mate. I could talk to you all day, but I've got to pull this thing to a wrap. So what I want to ask you about is you're constantly redefining yourself. You're constantly pushing yourself. You've already lived a couple of lives within this life, but but there's still more chapters out there. Tell us about your book. Tell us about what's next for you.
Yeah, so I'm still with the Veterans in Motorsport Australia. That's on the team principal of Mountain Road Racing, who runs that sort of thing. And by the way, I didn't answer this before, but the Veterans in Motorsport .au is our website.
Oh, yeah. We're going to
and
all those
guys can have
details in the show notes, yeah.
Yeah, and guys can have a look at that, and they can actually sign up to talk to us about being on the team and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's one good way. Or my phone number's in the website, so people can ring me direct and ask me 100 hard questions. The where I'm at, but I figure that I can't spend all my life racing and rallying fast cars. There's got to be an age limit on somewhere. Someone will pull a blanket over me. So I need something to do that. When I'm 80, if my mind's still working, I can stand on the stage and impart a bit of experience to people. So I'm in the process of refining my speaking skills to becoming I'm a keynote speaker, which I'm from now pretty much, and thought leader. So part of that is I didn't think I'd going to be writing a book. People said to me, they've always said, "Oh, you should write a book. You've had an interesting life," and I've always thought that would be pretty boring. Who'd want to read about that stuff? Because I was just doing my job. That was always the feeling. It wasn't too abnormal to me. So finally, with this speaker thing, it's I've been convinced that I need to write a book for my intellectual property, so to speak, for my ideas. So my main theme or disruptive idea is what I call ultimate freedom: how to be in charge of yourself.
Yep.
And I think it's an interesting thing. I read an article from a lady who wrote a book called The Regrets of the Dying. She was a palliative care nurse sister for 12 plus years, and she took note of all the people she cared for as they were going through their last stage there, and she wrote a book which was The Regrets of the Dying, which is the things that they regretted most. And then she recorded 5 main things that she regretted, and the one that leapt out was most of the people would say is that they say, "I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the lives others expected of me." So that was by far and away the most prevalent thing that dying people said on their deathbed. And that actually dovetails exactly with, and I hadn't read this when I came up with my disruptive idea, and that's what being in charge of yourself is all about, is being your own life's pilot, flying your own plane, so to speak. And everyone I speak to would love to do that or work towards that, but most people find it very difficult to put everything together over the time to get there, and that's why the regrets of the dying is an interesting combat indicator there.
Mate, I'm just going to read them out. I'll just put them up on the screen here. So number 1, I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. The one you mentioned, I think that's really confronting and powerful. Number 2, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Yeah, we're talking about money and slaving. Like, what are we actually working for?
Yeah, she said that it was mainly the men that said that. I wish they missed out on their family, they missed out on everything. So you got to have a bit of a balance there, which is a good one for VBC, I think, to try and work smarter, not harder.
Yeah, it's not about the grind; it's about what the outcome is. And if you're just grinding forever, then mate, go get a job. It's probably easier. Number 3, I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. Another pretty poke in the chest for guys in particular, to let other people know how they're feeling. Number 4, I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. Yeah, it's a biggie. I actually sent a mate of mine. I hadn't spoken to someone for one of my best mates for over 12 years. 2 nights ago, I sent him a text and haven't heard back from him yet. But it's just one of those things I've just got to reach out. And last but not least, I wish I'd let myself be happier. Really interesting, as and I hadn't read those before. I literally just Googled them and brought them up right now, mate. But I'm just on a moment of self-reflection there. I might actually print a few of those out because I've actually got some lessons learned. Number one, I think I'm living my life to myself. That's fine. Working so hard, I've got that in order. But definitely, to be honest, the courage to express my feelings and sometimes letting myself be happy. I think, putting myself on the line there, that's two things that I probably need to take a bit more self-accountability for.
Yeah.
And, work on it in my own space.
Yeah. Well, my favorite quote is, every day's a school day. So that's my biggest strength, actually, according to a lot of questionnaires I've answered, and being a learner. And so you've got to be curious about life, and so you can absorb all this stuff. So at the moment, I'm writing a book with, the ultimate freedom, the 5 fundamental principles to being in charge of yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm up to about 10,000 words so far. So it's an interesting thing. I've never written a book like that before.
Well, mate, if you need someone to have a test read, I'm always happy to proof it for you.
Yeah, you got a date there. I'm just going through it. It's interesting that I've got all this stuff in my head. I'm full of it. So it's just a matter of putting in some sort of flow order so people understand what I'm talking about. But I think everyone gets it really straight away. And the first principle is life is completely full of choices. The second principle is take full ownership of your own actions and the responsibility for their outcomes. The third one is goals. Combine and compartment your goals to match them with the patience needed to achieve them. For your ultimate freedom. The fourth one is awareness. You've got to be self-aware. A lot of people sort of brush over that. They're not self-aware. They're sort of aware of other things, but they're not self-aware. So you've got to be, awareness is the fourth. You've got to be not, in other words, if you want to lead, you've got to be able to lead yourself first, right? Which is, I think someone 2,000 years ago said that, Seneca the Younger. But anyway, and the fourth one is commitment. It's not easy to be in charge of yourself, mainly because there's so many other things in life. And you've got to be committed to this ultimate freedom. But ultimate freedom is well named because it's like we were talking about before, running your own business and so on. It's freedom, But as Tommy Hanks, who led the pace into Iraq, General Tommy Hanks, he said, "Freedom ain't free." There's a price to pay. And so that's the journey of it,
Well, mate, I just want to just as we wrap, VBC and Veteran Business Community. Yes, business is our thing, that the reason that we come together and connect. But it's not just. This is about life, mate. This is about the life that we live, the life that we choose, and then what we do with this short and precious time that we got on, this speck of dust floating around the sun. Mate, when you get that book out. Let me know. I want to read it, and I want to get you back on here because I want to really unpack some of this stuff in the book. I'm going to wrap by saying, first of all, it's been a real pleasure. Dare I say, honor chatting to you. It's not. I'm not. You got plenty of time left, mate. But Vietnam veterans and being able to talk to someone who has that, life experience, you got to earn your stories, mate. You can't steal other stories. You can't claim other stories. Only way you get your stories is to earn them and live them yourself. And mate, you've got a lifetime full of stories, and there's more that we can share. But
I'd one thing I'd be happy for all our members in particular to understand if many people are well connected. So I'm in the market for keynote speaking, and so if there's any corporate or semi-corporate and so on, even schools for year 11 and 12, if they can get this sort of message when they're that age, they're going to be superb adults by the time they're 20. So if there's any potential out there, please, through you or direct to me, let me know.
Absolutely. Well, anyone who wants to get in touch with Robert, just let us know and we'll do the hookup, mate. Let's wrap it there. Rob, really appreciate your time today. It's been not only interesting, and I'm fascinated about this stuff, but particularly that last 10 minutes has probably been the highlight for me in terms of things that I need to look at from a self-reflection perspective. And it is probably a sign of the legacy in your next chapter to come as you go down this pathway of now starting to share some of the lessons of this brilliant life that you've lived to this point. So, mate, plenty to go yet. Plenty to go
well,
yet.
I greatly appreciate your time, and you know, it's a privilege to be having a chat with you on the podcast, mate. So,
yeah, champion. Right now, so as we head off, this is a community, the veteran business community. Just forget about the business bit. It is a community of like-minded people who have served. We're just here because we're interested in business. But if you want to meet with people like Rob and just connect and learn stories and share what you've got, that's what we're here about. So veteranbc.com. It's been a real pleasure chatting with Rob today, and I can't wait to get him back. Hopefully get that book out, mate. I'm going to read it and we'll come back and talk about the book.
Thank you, mate.
My name's Pete Liston. I'm going to wrap that. What I'm going to do very quickly.
By the way,
yeah, up to you.
Just remember now, it's always too soon to quit, mate.
It's always too soon to quit. It's all quick. Yeah, mate. I love it. Rightio, I'm just going to share my screen for anyone on YouTube and just going to show a couple of these pictures of Rob. For anyone listening on the podcast, though, that's it. I'm going to call it a wrap there. But for anyone on YouTube, I'm just going to just have a moment with Rob, talk through some of these pictures. My name's Pete Liston. That's it. Rob, tell us about this picture, mate.
So this was taken after we come back from our last patrol. There's a couple of things on this. I got a magnum of champagne on my thigh there.
Yeah, so, I didn't notice that. Yeah, you do.
I didn't take it out on patrol with me. I got it when we got back. But when a patrol does its last patrol, the tradition is in those days they get a magnum of champers for to celebrate that they're all standing there.
Is this the bitch?
Yeah, that's the bitch. Yeah,
that's the bitch. For anyone on the anyone still listening, it's what would you call it? Sauna SLR.
Well, it's a very unique weapon. That was my personal property. I bought it actually.
Yeah.
And I was the third and last owner of the bitch. And well, it wasn't the last owner because I donated it to the SEAL team over in Coronado there.
Yeah.
But it was made out of bits, so there was no serial numbers or anything like that on it. It was made out of bits of leftover SLRs by one of the squadron armourers in the squadron before mine was there, one squadron, and the barrel was only 11 inches long, and the gas system had been cut down as well. So the gas system was about probably about 4.5 inches long.
Yeah.
Instead of about 8 inches or whatever it is in the normal SLR. So it had an automatic rifle magazine on it. So 30 round magazine there, you can see. I had a Kiwi FN pistol grip put on the front because the four stock, when you put a few rounds through it, it gets so hot you couldn't hold it.
Yeah.
So that's why the pistol grip's on the front, and it helps to hold the weapon on song. Was
that your weapon was that your weapon, your personal weapon, primary weapon for the tour?
For most of it, yeah. So the other patrol shot you see, which is earlier in the piece, I'm carrying. Yeah, so I'm second from the left there. Just with a sweat rag, a parachute silk around.
Same. No, that's a lot. That's a longer. That's
yeah. So this is a normal SAS cut down weapon. So there's no they shortened it by taking the flash hider off it and cutting it down a little bit. So they were a bit shorter. Again, the 30 round magazine. Again, the pistol grip on the front to hold it because they move around a bit, when you're in action. So that was an issued weapon, from the squadron. And you notice the other weapons there. There's a couple other. that's Hans Flair on the left, DCM, out to
Is this
IC,
Hans?
and
Is this Hans Flair here? Is it
yeah.
the blonde guy? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and Graham Brammer is squatting there. He's our patrol sergeant, a brilliant sergeant. Both Hans and Graham. Hans was a major, and Graham was a captain later on.
yeah.
And they were the guys that had a lot to do with training up for RAR on their journey to being 2 Commander Regiment. You know, they did a lot of the training over there, and Hans in particular. Hans ended up as the commandant as a full colonel, I think, before he retired, as the commandant of the two Commander Regiment. Uh, yeah. So you got SLRs, you got what Snow here is handling in the middle, next to my left hand. He's got an XM148, which was the forerunner of what Graham, patrol commander, is holding, the XM203, which is the normal later on one, but the XM148 was a prototype of that with a 40
Is that like a light machine gun? Is it?
bomb chuckers. No. Well, they're all on full automatic, these weapons, right? So you got two M16s in there with a 40 mic underneath.
Yeah.
With a 79 round. And you got 3 SLRs there. So a lot of all on automatic, a lot of hitting power. And you had to use a lot of that if you break contact off, and that was the idea, where you can get you shoot and scoot sort of thing. So that, but the other one, well, if you go back to the other one with the bitch there, that one. So it had a AR backslide on it. So the on the SLR sight, the back is just a leaf that you can that comes up, whereas the AR sight is fixed, but it's got a bigger aperture in it. So, which is better for snap shooting. So this is a great scouts weapon for mine, and because it's so short, it was a little bit back heavy. So it was better for, in terms of holding. SLR is generally a heavy weapon for scouting. So it was very good. When I went down to the SEALs, it had an SLR flash hider on the front when I got it. But if you put 30 rounds through it, in the test or something like that, or down the range rehearsals or anything like that, the barrel would heat up so much that it used to blow a prong out of the flash hider. So there was a bit of a flame that used to come out the end of the barrel. The round's still exploding as it comes out this 11-inch barrel there. So this flash hider wasn't up to speed. So when I went down to the SEAL team, we went to the docks there, and there's one of the SEAL team boys said, I'll take you down to the docks, and I'll introduce you to a fella down there. And he was a little Arvin guy in a caravan. And he walked in there, and he had a great big lathe in his caravan. He was an artificer or something. And so he fashioned a sleeve with a SLR thread on the inside and a M60 thread on the outside of the 1-inch sleeve there.
Yeah.
And so then I was able to put an M60 flash hider on the weapon, and those prongs never blew out. They was very strong, M60 machine gun flash hider on it. And so that was the actual weapon. And of course it was painted, for camouflage and all that sort of stuff. So it was a fantastic weapon. People said, well, how accurate was it with that smaller barrel? But I could hit a group of 79 shell casings at 50 meters, with a quick aim shot. And I reckon that's good enough to hit a center mass of any bloke walking around. So that was good enough for me.
You're in close country. 50 meters is a long way away.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah. So that was good. It was a brilliant weapon. And when I left, when we were packing up to go, the OC came around, who wasn't all that popular. He came around and was looking for the weapon. He had a brother in the tankies. I think he wanted to give it to him. And he said, Trooper Kilsby, where's that weapon, Bob? We can't take weapons home to Australia. And I said, oh, boss, you should have come earlier. You should have come earlier. And I said, why is that? I said, I knew we couldn't take weapons home, so I've chucked it down the big long drop of shithouse. Got rid of it. He went, oh, terrible, terrible. And I said, okay. But while I was speaking to him, the weapon was dismantled in my duffel bag, which I had my feet on at the time. And we went down to Tonsanute and we gave Commander Kelly down at Spec Warfare Wing, Special Warfare Command there, to send a couple of his SEAL team matlows down to the Tonsanute. And they came down there and they were in their dress rig and on their Jeep and stuff like that. And they come down and we presented the weapon to them for the SEAL team, from our patrol to November platoon, basically, for our missions there. And so I went away and I was told that it was, they'd put it in their museum in Coronado, and then possibly it went over when they changed over to Miami or wherever they are, and they've gone over to Miami. I think they've got another base there with a museum there. So I think it's there somewhere. So
well, maybe one day you can get over to Miami and
that'd be good.
Touch the old goal again.
Yeah, that'd be good. But it sounded because of the gas system was a bit slower, than the automatic rate of our automatic SLRs. And it sounded, with the flame coming out, it sounded like almost like a 30 cal machine gun or something. It was an interesting weapon, but very loud. I used to do all our rehearsals. We go down to the Nui Dat range, and we do all our comprehensive rehearsals that we used to do. Laying all our claymore banks and doing contact drills and with live rounds and all that. We do all that, and I used to do that with an M16, and they wouldn't let me use the bitch in those rehearsals because it was too loud. So I'd go and pick that up, and then I'd go off 50, 100 meters away down the range and do all my own scout shooting training, for myself. Well, I was into that sort of stuff. Snap shooting and stuff like that. So it's a bit of a story.
Just out of curiosity, did you ever do the sneaker range at Canungra?
A couple of years ago, myself and Graham, patrol commander, who lives up at
just around the corner from your place, mate.
Yeah, that's right. He lives up at near Caloundra there somewhere, Curramundi, or is it Curramudgee or something? Anyway, we were invited to, they were running a SAS patrol course in Canungra, or part of it there. And we were invited to come down and do a bit of a show and tell, and, patrol commander and his scout, talking to the guys going through their training, the SAS guys in the patrol course. And that was great. And so I got to accompany the boys out on the sneaker ranges out in the hills there, and give my comments. They valued what I had to say about things. And
get some rounds down range. They let you have a shot.
The guys there these days, they got RPG rounds whizzing in and all this sort of thing. It's it's like a Hollywood movie these days compared to the old things we used to do in Papua New Guinea and Western Australia and all that sort of thing.
A couple of tin cans that go ting ting when you hit them. Well, mate,
great talking to you, mate.
Yeah, look, I'm going to wrap it out just quick as I go. I was in Korea last year and I did a personal tour of Kapyong. Spent the day out there walking the ground, and
that'll be interesting.
Yeah, being 3 RAR was a sort of bit of an important moment to go back and have a look. And right at the back of the mountain, when I was walking through, all of a sudden I hear a whole heap of gunshots. And I was it was just cool timing because just being in the valley, I was there by myself, just walking around for a few hours. I heard all these gunshots. So I sort of walked up, and there was a South Korean army range, like just sitting on the back there. So I sort of rocked up and just sort of walked onto the range, and they're like, "Oh, you can't come in here, come in here." I was trying to explain the story of like, "Oh, this is a really important place. This is where the battalion." Anyway, they kicked me off the range. I'm like, "Got to get out of here." I was so excited to think that I could go up and see a few rounds go down range. But mate, I could talk to you all day about this stuff. Got to run, get myself a feed. I'm going to press stop record. Anyone else who's got this far, well done. Take care. See you later.